Holiness. And thank you, Geshe Damdul, for being with us. Your Holiness, welcome back to Australia and welcome to Sydney. It's lovely to have you here. I gather you've had a bit of a flu this week. Are you feeling well?
Better.
Better, good. We're very grateful for that. And congratulations on a year of anniversaries in 2009. What, 20 years since you won the Nobel Peace Prize, 50 years since you left Tibet. A year of many anniversaries for you. Let me introduce our panellists today and then I'll explain what we have in mind today. We have here Dr. Martin Seligman. He's Director of the Centre for Positive Psychology at the University of Pennsylvania. He's a Professor of Psychology and he really founded, co-founded I think he'd say, but he was the driving force behind a field called positive psychology, which I think he would see as a major response to psychology's focus on negative emotions rather than well-being and positive emotions, and has a long career studying helplessness, pessimism, optimism, and more recently, positive emotion. Over here is Professor Mark Hauser, who's from Harvard. He's a psychology professor there and a leading evolutionary biologist, and has had a long career studying animal minds, also language and evolutionary biology in all its guises. More recently though, and of interest for today's conversation, Mark has written a book called Moral Minds, looking at the way in which the question of whether we're born into the world with a moral sense, whether it might be instinctual. And of course, you're very familiar with your friend and colleague Alan Wallace, a Buddhist scholar, leading Buddhist scholar and meditator, and is the president of the Centre, the Institute, I should say, for Consciousness Studies in Santa Barbara. So these are our guests, and what we have in mind today is for us to share a conversation for about half an hour, you and I, and then each of our speakers will join us in the discussion to present their work to you, and hopefully engage in what is a long history for you in this dialogue between science and Buddhist psychology and Buddhism. So thank you, and thanks to your translator for being here. I wanted to start and ask you, I remember reading for you as a 9-year-old boy, and we've seen those pictures of you as a 9-year-old boy, your first lesson in Buddhist psychology was to learn that the definition of the mental, is that which is luminous and knowing. And I wonder, 65 years later, whether you are any clearer. And 65 years later, are you any clearer about what that means and what it could mean for the rest of us?
Oh, naturally. When I start learning these mind or the sub-mind, or I don't know, you see, different variety of consciousness or mind. No enthusiasm, actually no interest, but compulsory to learn. Then gradually, of course, more serious interest. Then particularly, I think last few decades, when we engage, I think a biologist also, I think, some of these sort of emotions is a biological factor, so very much related with that. And also we human being and other animals also is common. And then of course brain, our human brain is something very special, so more sophisticated. As a result, the thinking of the power of thinking is much, much greater. And then also it's a meeting with some specialist about different emotions, like Paul Ekman. Then you see, sometimes you see, according their finding, as a result of test or experiment. So then sometimes I feel, we also need more, divisions. In Buddhist text, it's about, I think, almost, I think, more than, almost, I think, 2,000 years. At the Buddha's time, then 2,600 years. So then, till recently, the scripture mentioned, we always remain that. Now, with the help of scientists who also, you see, study about emotion, these different things, I think, I feel it's very helpful to enrich our traditional sort of knowledge about mind,
What
emotion.
does it mean to say that the mind or the mental is luminous and knowing?
It's not physical, no form. So it is very basic nature is knowing, riba. Knowing, I think mainly, knowing. And after knows, then feeling. So the luminosity is so clarity and is it that? I think try to, or implication is formless, but something very clear. Many things can reflect on it. And through that way, knowing. I think that's the meaning.
I understand on your desk in Dharamsala, there is a plastic brain given to you, a model of a brain given to you by the late Robert Livingston, your friend and scientist. And I guess science is very keen to define what it's talking about. And some would say that the mind is the 100 billion neurons in that brain, 100 billion brain cells. Or they would say that the mind is a machine. Some would say that it is a computer. But how do you visualize the mind?
Level 10 is summary. Level 10. Now here we have to make distinction. The grosser level of mind, or more subtle and more subtle. The grosser level of mind, of course, a product of brain or neuron. There's no question. But then more deeper, more subtler. Now, for example, I think that's okay. I think we now already begin to investigation. Person who clinically dead, so that means brain dead. But still, there's something that dead body is inside. Indication that dead body still remain very fresh. Sometimes 3 weeks, 4 weeks remain like that. So we have to find explanation how it happened. It's not everybody, but those people who have some experience about meditation. Then I think last 50 years in India, as far as I notice, around I think 20.
20 people.
20 people.
I wonder how science could investigate that.
So that's what, you see, I think how many years passed? I think at least, around 10 years. You see, in our science conference, you see, this subject, you see, come. So then scientists, you see, they showing very, very keen interest, and they make available some simple machine, you see, to examine that person who suppose some subtle mind still in the body. So last, you see, few years, when the machine there, and with person who have, you see, that the knowledge or handle that mission, nobody die with that sort of experience, or that experience, or no, because of that. I mean, that not occur. Of course, people dying, I think, every day, but you see, no one, you see, that happen. So when someone, you see, after death, body remain very fresh, then mission not available. But fortunately, last year, one our master, a good scholar, as well as good practitioner, at very high position in the Yellowhead sect, actually leader of the Yellowhead sect, is a supreme leader. So he, I think quite some time, you see, his physical very weak. So then one day I received information or report, you see, he dead. Then after 5 days, I received another report, his body remained fresh.
Meditative equipoise at the time of death.
So then I immediately asked the Delhi hospital, Dharamsala, where this mission kept. So they immediately sent, I think, 2 persons.
So you're observing, you're sensing the continuation of mind
So wait.
death.
Wait.
Oh.
Excuse, it's a little bit long. So then, 2 persons with some mission went there and put all wires on that dead bodies as they had. And then after about after 10 days, machine shows some short electric.
Oh, so they put an electroencephalogram on the head, measuring
Usually,
brainwaves.
you see, after few days after death, it is impossible, but it happened.
Tricky.
So, you see, actually, you see, that body remained fresh about 3 weeks. So that we, the scientific way, not yet is a fine explanation. This is the subject to further investigation. From the ancient Indian sort of psychology, then the subtle mind, in the most subtle mind, which is more independent from this body. So that mind still in the body. So grosser level mind dead, but subtle mind still remain there in that body, like that. So as soon as you see that mind depart from the body, then immediately within minute body decay, and some smell and some liquid come. That always happens. So this is one field. I think remaining of this century, I think is one field sort of further investigation, jointly. The Buddhist sort of psychologist sort of explanation, and modern scientists with this equipment, then things may become clearer. But in any way, worthwhile to investigate.
You pose an incredible challenge to science. And I know in recent years, there's been, as you would know very well, there's been tremendous interest in the plasticity of our brain. It's a very hopeful view of the brain. I think the science is still very much being developed. But you would argue, I know, that Buddhism has long held a philosophy and an understanding of the plasticity of the brain. Can you explain the Buddhist interpretation of plasticity and how that links with what you have read and understood about the neuroscience of plasticity? That our brain can change in response to behaviours or environment, input, therapy, education?
As a result of the new experiment, like Dr. Richard Davidson, they begin to feel through sheer sort of meditation. So that means just sort of mental activities that actually can change brain. So they detailed this word, I think you should explain. You see, through meditation, this is some brain, this is change.
Yes.
Usually, classical view, it's impossible. But now they begin to see through just a sheer sort of mental work,
Yes.
some change in the brain.
And this is
Yes.
Richard Davidson's work, isn't it?
Yes.
So he's working with meditators and observing what happens in their brain
Right.
after they do a course of meditation. Alan?
Sure, I'd be very brief, but there was a very well-known study that he published in the Proceedings of the National Academy of Science a few years ago of highly trained Tibetan meditators for the most part.
Can you hear?
Can you
Speak up.
Can you hear?
More louder.
Can you hear?
Louder.
No, so a few years ago, this very well-known study was published in the Proceedings of the National Academy of Science. Richard Davidson at the University of Wisconsin had a fair number of monks from Bhutan, Tibet primarily, as I recall, who had meditated anywhere between 10,000 and 60,000 hours. So these are truly highly trained, very professional meditators. And what they found is that as a result of, it seemed, correlated with their meditative experience was increased activity in the left prefrontal cortex, which Richard Davidson and other neuroscientists believe is correlated with positive affect, feeling good. And it was really quite exceptionally well developed, and it was more developed among meditators who had meditated 40,000, 50, 60,000, as opposed to 10 or 20. So it seemed to be correlated with the extent of the meditative practice. That was one major finding, and another one was exceptional increase in gamma. And so this is an EEG measurement, a certain frequency of the electromagnetic fields generated by the brain, and that too was really very exceptional. Exactly what that means is difficult to sort out, but what was quite unequivocally demonstrated in this study is that years and years of very intensive meditation do clearly have a measurable impact on the brain. So more is to be seen, and longitudinal studies clearly need to be done.
Absolutely. I guess we've focused too, I'm rather interested in this question of, we've focused very much on individual brains and the plasticity of individual brains, measuring the positive outcomes for individuals. And I wonder if there might be scope for a collaboration between Buddhism and psychology to work out how we might measure the social plasticity of brains, the ability of how individual minds might effectively collaborate. Because it seems to me that we can understand individual brains, but do we not want to better understand how brains work together to respond to climate change, for example, or war. I wonder if that would be an interesting project for Buddhism and psychology.
그래, 미끼를 죽어면서 collective soul. I don't know.
It's too big a question. I think it'll come up today, though. Our other speakers might be able to share some wisdom on that one. I think that's a good answer. Because I don't know either.
One thing I want to tell you, sometimes the people use the word, some dialogue between Buddhism and modern science. So then I feel it may create confusion. So more precise, I don't know the exact word, I don't know, but according to my own sort of limited vocabulary, I usually used to make like this: Buddhist science, and then Buddhist philosophy or Buddhist concept, then Buddhist religion, 3 parts. So, discussing with modern scientists, nothing to do with the Buddhist religion. No, I think basically not Buddhist concept. Some Buddhist sort of views as a part of philosophy, like the relativity, the absence of absolute or independence. These involve, but basically simply Buddhist science. That means in Buddhism, you see, there a lot of explanation about mind, because the Buddhist sort of the method or way of approach is training mind. Through training of mind, change our mind, transformation of our emotion. That's the way, not through sort of some kind of blessing from outside, but within ourselves, change. So therefore, the mind is something very important for the matter. So therefore, we should have full knowledge about that. So the Buddhist psychology or Buddhist sort of in the Buddhist science, although the matters, or sometimes some Buddhist literature, you see, mentioned this geography, world geography in center Mount Meru. That outdated. I do not believe. At least for this planet. And some other planet, who knows? So Buddhists actually touch these things. But these, nothing to do with religion, but simply mentioned about the, cosmology. And how to start this whole universe. These also is a touch. 5 elements, like that. So that's Buddhist science. So we are discussing with modern scientists about modern science and Buddhist science. So this is nothing to do with some discussion about whether there's next life on these things, or salvation on these things, or God. Nothing to do. There's something different level, like that. So that I want to make clear. Buddhist science, not Buddhism.
Excellent. Let's look at how Buddhist science views emotion. This has been a very interesting partnership between you in your dialogue with scientists. And, to conceive that Buddhist science considers that there are 84,000 negative emotions is unimaginable to me. And I guess your great quest is to help us relieve ourselves of negative or destructive emotions like craving, hostility, delusion. And it still makes me wonder why those hostile emotions, those destructive emotions, if they are so bad for us, why do they persist so much? Why are they so pervasive? And so I'm thinking about, we want to try, your practice is about trying to eliminate and investigate destructive emotions. And yet, destructive emotions seem to be essentially human. They are so prevalent, they are so pervasive across human cultures and societies. And I wonder if that means they have a purpose.
I believe these, different emotions, each emotion, I think, in biological level, some sort of, some purpose. Anger, fear is for different, one's own survival. Attachment is to bring facility for survival. Anger, hatred, expel the negative factor. And proud brings more effort to be top. Jealousy, also in order to survival. Sometimes jealousy also necessary. So that's a fact. So some scientists once told me, anger develop the blood circulation more on arms in order to fight.
Yeah.
And the fear develop, and then blood circulation goes more on leg, ready to run away. So you see, there is a close connection. Emotions and biological, certain sort of mental sort of activities and physical, very close. So these negative or some emotions, these emotions are very much related with a biological factor, mainly for survival and reproduction and defense, like that. Then another level. Now, this moment, we can't say this emotion is destructive, this emotion is constructive. We can't say that. Animals also have same. Now we human beings, because of this intelligence, so we have the ability to think long-term interest, not just temporary survival. So then, in terms of long-term sort of interest, then some of these emotion is actually no benefit. In fact, harmful. Some emotion useful. Then the concept destructive emotion, constructive emotion, then develop according to the long-term interest. So basically in Buddhism, long-term in the sense, firstly, Buddhism explaining the possibility of elimination some of these emotions, emotion which ultimately based on ignorance. That is possible to remove. because it's based on ignorance. More enlightened view develop. That sometimes we call wisdom. So knowledge or awareness which knows the reality. That is based on valid mind. So valid mind, ignorance, contradiction each other. Therefore, valid mind train or increasing the ignorance or the opposite, just opposite sort of, direct opposite ignorance can reduce. That's the Buddhist sort of philosophy. Not only philosophy, but that is Buddhist concept, Buddhist approach. So then, now there is certain goal, certain sort of purpose or certain ultimate goal. According that, among these emotions, biological factors, emotion, some are useful to achieve that, and we can further strengthening. But some emotion is no use for that goal. Then, and not only that, if we think more deeper way, these emotions, those emotions which based on ignorance is ultimately bring some discomfort or disaster, such as anger. For immediate, anger is useful to different. But anger creates some kind of blindness. Too much anger there, we can't see the reality. Similarly, too much attachment there, you can't see the reality. In order to see the reality, our mind should be very calm and unbiased. Right? Through unbiased mental state, you can see objectively, we can look objectively. Then you can see the reality. So, if it's like animal, just day-to-day life, feeding, shelter, sex, that much, then no sort of what's the not much relevant destructive emotion or constructive emotion. We human beings, with this intelligence, long-term interest, then you see some emotions are useful, some emotions are very negative. Therefore, now because of demarcation, destructive emotion and positive emotion.
So how would you view an experience like depression? You know, the emphasis now is very much on investigating depression and its biochemical causes so that people can develop biochemical treatments. And so in the context of this conversation about destructive emotion, how do you view depression?
Actually, in Buddhist psychology, the depression is I think the exact term depression, I don't think available. So I think we have to find a new terminology. So depression, as far as I know, I think we can't define depression.
In fact, as for depression, we cannot classify depression as one solid mental state because it has various kinds.
Due to main causes and conditions. Some depression, you see, due to this cause, or that sort of condition. And this similar sort of the level of depression, but essentially different cause. So therefore, I think treatment, should deal with the real causes of that depression. Depression is something like symptom. So like illness, some pains here. As we say, oh, I have this pain and some drugs to remove. That's not sufficient. This pain, what is the causes? And then dealing with that causes, then this pain relief. So similarly, depression, mental illness, depression, different causes. So we have to deal with causes of depression. So there may be, I think, a variety.
A question before I involve our next speaker, and that is, Your Holiness, in your book, Ancient Wisdom, Modern World, you called for a radical reorientation from our habitual preoccupation with the self, especially in the West. And I wonder if you see a risk with the huge increase in interest in meditation, whether in the West we might risk an increase in that focus on the self rather than an outward focus.
그렇다. 어. 어. 응. 응. 저런다 가르치는 데 있어.
We could move your chair around a bit if you like. You can
응. that is. Now, whether accept religion or not, it is quite obvious. Those individuals who always think just oneself and don't care about others' well-being, and even to some extent, they exploit on others in order to fulfill one's own interest, or bully on others. So all these murders, theft, sexual abuse, and then telling lies, deceiving, all these ultimately self-centered, extreme self-centered, egoistic. So someone who sort of indulge killing, we cannot stop. Oh, don't do killing. But we have to deal the motivation level. Then that action can stop. Something change at the motivation level. So therefore, the too much because I think the West, the Judeo-Christian background, sort of culture, or now like the Christianity or Islam or many other religions or Judaism, I think they emphasize faith. Even in order to increase faith, the concept of creator happened. So the total faith towards creator, that means total submission to God. So that actually same effect, the lessening self-centered, strong ego. Isn't it? I'm just creation, part of creation of God. And totally submit to God. So Buddhism say another way, there is no independent self, selflessness. So two ways of approach. but target more or less same, reduce egoistic sort of extreme self-centered egoism. So I think that's common everywhere. I think one family, say, I think 5 people in the family, someone who always thinks just himself or herself, don't care about the rest of the 4 families. And I think eventually that family create more trouble. 5 people in the family always have the spirit of sharing each other. Then that family much happier. Even dogs, some individual dogs always fight. Then whether he or she always remain lonely. One dog is friendly, every other dogs, then always remain very peaceful, sleep, like that. So that's a fact.
You know, and before I come to Marty, I just want to say, which makes me wonder if this, you know, meditation has taken the West by storm. People are very interested in it, and yet many are practicing it separate from Buddhist philosophy, perhaps. And I wonder whether, when you separate the two like that, there is a risk that meditation makes people more self-centered, more self-obsessed, without that context.
I think meditation, historically, in India, meditation is common. Buddhism, non-Buddhism. Even you see samatha, vipassana, both common. Buddhist, non-Buddhist. So some other sort of philosophical viewpoint or certain sort of motivation, then due to these factors, then meditation or vipassana or samatha make differences. Otherwise, same. So today, meditation, in the sense, training of mind, is related with everybody, whether believer or non-believer. Even those people who very much sort of are say, against religion, if they, through training, their sort of method to control religion becoming more effective, so better. Like that. Even I think the cruel person, more concentration,
Can benefit.
Develop sharp mind. And then also the one Buddhist concept, interdependency, concept of interdependency, that gives them more holistic. So their destructive action become much more effective.